everyone. Today is February 19th, 2021. It is 1 p.m. in the afternoon. The purpose of this discussion is to discuss fiscal year 2022 budget discussion and a town meeting checklist. Is there a motion to call the meeting to order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are now open. With us today, gentlemen, we have Ms. Hebert, the town administrator, Ms. Melissa Fogg, our town accountant. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to turn the budget discussion over to either Ms. Hebert or Ms. Fogg, if you want to, whoever wants to take over. And we've been provided a little document sheet here for everybody to view. Does it? You guys have this little document here?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm wondering too if I can try to share it on the screen. If that's okay with you. I haven't done that before.
If you can figure that out, Ms. Hebert.
All right, let me see if I can do it and see if it'll work. And if not, then I'll just kind of go through it. I'll do this screen here. Can you guys see this?
Yep,
Yep.
very good.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. I kind of put this together, working with Melissa, just to give like an overview of what you're looking at right now. And I know we've been through this before. The budget's always changing as we go through different departments and as we get updates on revenue from the state. So this kind of gives you a synopsis of where we are right now. And as we make changes, we'll adapt from there. So this first page I have here is the FY22 revenue projections. And I tried to put on here, we have the FY21 budgeted, and then the FY21 recap / actual. The reason I did that is because even if you look at the first line, state aid, when we budgeted for FY21, the current year we're in now, we projected a 5% decrease in state aid. And we were lucky that so far through the year, the state has been able to level fund. So you'll see how under the second column there, the recap / actual, we have additional funding for FY21 from state aid. So if you look across the board, you'll see the state aid, the local receipts, the levy, the transfers, and the total revenue. FY22 is projected right now, as of today. We've plugged in a 5% cut in state aid again. We don't really have any solid figures from the state, and in trying to be conservative, we're doing the 5% cut again. And obviously, as we get more information from the state as time goes on, we can adjust that as needed. Local receipts, we level funded to FY21. The only increase there is water fees to meet their budget. The levy, I'm sure you guys are, this is pretty straightforward for you, but it kind of shows where we're starting for FY22 at the 19,212,514. We add in our 2.5% increase. The assessors have given us an estimate for new growth right now of 200,000. You'll remember last year we had 734,000 in new growth. That was largely due to the commercial properties. And then we have our debt exclusion listed, the projection from the assessors for overlay, and the projection for the solar revenue that would be transferred to the capital expense fund. And that gives us a total of 20,001,886 for the tax side. And then currently the total transfers, if you notice the drop off here right now, it's mainly because we used free cash to balance our budget last year. And right now I haven't plugged in any free cash to balance the budget. So we're slightly lower with that number as well. And our total brings us at 31,611,829, which is currently a 1.2% increase over last year from the recap.
Julie, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, question.
Sure.
Julie, the debt exclusion, what does that cover? Is that part of the police station still? And
It's the police station and the school that they have.
okay, very good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And Selectman DeRoche, to answer that, to go a little further with that answer, the schools, we talked about it in the past when we talked about the school roof, the schools, debt exclusion should come off the books in 2026.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you just raised a good point. Maybe you could put in there as a footnote, you know, in this presentation, 'cause I think others might have the same question, just when those come off the books, you know, for the police station and the school department.
Yeah.
I don't have
Ms.
the
Hebert-
exact date, but that one's far out. That one I think is in the 40s, the 2040s.
Yeah,
But-
the police station was at least a 20-year borrowing, and I think we started borrowing somewhere around 2015-ish, somewhere around there. So it would go out to at least, what, 35 anyway, right?
Yeah.
Right around the corner before you know it.
Yeah, if it was a 20-year bond, I forget what we actually bonded on the police department. I know it was like $5 million. And the school was a lot more than that. I think it was 27 million, but that one definitely comes off the books in 2026. But before we go any further, so everybody at home and anybody who's going to be watching this, including us, the Board of Selectmen, we talked about it last year. What revenues the DOR and the state looks for us to be able to try to maintain within our budgeting. That is the 2.5% increase to $480,000. And then your new growth is really where they look for you to work within your capacity of budgets, right?
That's right.
I can't hear you, Ms. Ebert.
Yep, that's correct.
So that's the number I talked about. I think I talk about it every year. So if we were looking at it from that perspective, from a business perspective, it's $680,000 roughly is what you really have to go all the way around and do everything that you should do. And as Ms. Hebert alluded to, last year, I think it was somewhere around, we used $335,000 to balance the budget on free cash, Ms. Hebert.
Yep, that's right.
Dramatically down from previous years. So we're heading in the right direction. It's kind of tough in today's world where we're at as a community with a $32 million budget. We understand that, but we keep continuing to strive to get ourselves off of free cash. Go ahead, Ms. Hebert.
All right, so if we're good, I'll go to the next screen. This kind of gives you a general overview of the FY22 expenditure requests. And this is as it stands today. Obviously, the selectmen, you know, this is your first time looking through the budget. We haven't met with departments, so these numbers will change. But as it stands right now, what was given for a draft from departments, and I don't know if you want me to list all of them, but you can see here the FY21 pre-COVID budget numbers. And those were, I'll add in here, these are the numbers that they were never actually voted upon because we were in the middle of our budget season when obviously, you know, COVID hit and we had to make changes and cut 10% of our expenses across the board to come up with that middle column, the actual FY21 voted budget. But I put it in here so that you can see, you know, we've kept those cuts in our FY22 projected budget. There's still some stuff missing and I'll get into that next, but if you kind of look across the board, you can see that we've retained a lot of those cuts, and our numbers for FY22 for the most part are still lower than what they were presented for FY21 before COVID hit. So, you know.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Julie, I think this is a really good presentation, and I think what could even, you know, add to it would be if you had a pie chart to show how, you know, the percentage of where the money is allocated to. You know, I think, you know, like public safety represents a good portion of our, you know, what the Board of Selectmen are responsible for, you know, like public works. Those are things that I think would be great for the Finance Committee to understand, for the residents to understand, because those are core services. Those are things that the taxpayer really demand. You know, they want strong public safety. They want a strong public works department. Those are tangible things that people can grasp hold of. And I think it'd be good just to get a sense of, you know, the percentage of our overall budget that our money's dedicated to.
I agree. I love that. I can add that in. So if there's nothing else on here, I think I'll get into more specifics in one of the next screens. So here we have just a quick budget summary. On the revenue side, I've already kind of said, you know, we are currently projecting the 5% decrease in state aid. You know, the governor's budget proposal has shown a level funded state aid, but we haven't heard yet from the House Ways and Means and the Senate Ways and Means what their proposals would be. So that's a number that is to be determined, but right now we have a 5% decrease plugged in. Our estimated local receipts, again, are level funded from last year. And under the draft budget as proposed currently, in order to balance our budget, we would need to use $143,000 of free cash. On the expense side, currently I have no COLAs plugged in for non-union employees and the collective bargaining agreements that don't have any contracts yet for FY22. So COLAs are out right now. The only collective bargaining group that's in here is the fire and EMS, because they do have a contract that lasts through FY22. So we're missing that. We haven't received any budget proposal yet from the schools, the Acushnet Public Schools, I should say. So their budget is level funded under this draft as it stands. Departments have been asked to level fund expenses, which were cut 10% for FY21. There are some that have requested specific increases, and I'll get to that on the next page. And fixed costs are currently accounting for $512,635 in increases, and I'll get into that detail on the next page after that as well. So that gives you kind of like a sense of where we are. And again, this is today, and you know, things will change as we move on.
Mr. Chair, this one, or Julie, one quick question.
Yeah.
Where you say no COLAs, all our contracts are up, or 3 of the contracts are up on June 30th?
Yes.
And that's police, town hall workers, and
DPW.
And DPW. Okay.
Yep. So until we have solid figures for any of that, I've left it all level funded.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm just.
And Julie, I just want to go back to the comment that Julie made when we talked about, we asked departments that they cut 10%. Not everybody cut 10%. Not everybody was able to cut 10%. Some departments took it on the chin a little harder than others. Obviously, because of the size of their budget, that's where you would go after the money. So I know DPW took a hit last year, pretty significant hit last year. So we'll have that conversation when we review individual budgets at an upcoming selectmen's meeting. We'll be doing some individual budgets at the end of that. So we'll have that discussion when that time comes. But I don't want everybody or anybody at home thinking that everybody cut 10%, because that's a little unfair analysis.
Right. Agreed. Okay, so if I'm good, I'll go to the next page. So this is getting into the FY22 significant departmental increases. And, you know, I try to look at the most major ones. Obviously, some departments have slight increases of a couple $100 here or there for contractual obligations or what have you. But I try to pick out the bigger ones that I think the selectmen will end up focusing on. These total about $408,000 in increases that are plugged into the budget currently. I can go through them quickly, but I think, again, this is some of the stuff that I think the Board of Selectmen will want to meet with these departments and kind of discuss this and see if the changes are needed. The assessors have an increase in their management, consulting, and software expense. The treasurer collector has added $21,000 for adding in a part-time payroll administrator position. Conservation has proposed an increase to their stormwater permit line item of $3,500. The police have proposed an increase in their cruiser line of about $33,000. Last year, they cut and only bought 1 cruiser, where we typically buy 2. So this would be bumping back up to 2 cruisers again to get us back on track. The building department, these 2 increases here that amount to $13,000. They're mainly for the implementation of our online permitting software. We got a grant to cover the first year and all of the implementation of the online permitting program, but this is the annual cost of that subscription. And in addition, you know, they use iPads now to kind of go out in the field and update things as they see them. And the $1,000 being added in there is for the the data plan for the iPads to be able to do that, which is, you know, been a huge benefit for us with the, you know, COVID going on, that we're able to do all of this remotely. Forestry has an increase. We've talked about this in the past, the tree removal. They're increasing it by $5,000 this year. The DPW under their highway, you know, Kevin had mentioned that they made a lot of cuts going into FY21. So I think this is trying to help recoup some of that. They have overtime increase of 15,000, police detail increase of 10,000, gasoline expense increase of 20,000, and road materials expense increase of $110,000. Under CMAS, there's an increase in the incinerator CMAS expense of $95,000 and an increase in the equipment rental of about $73,000. And finally, under miscellaneous, we've added a line item for the Lake Street Improvement Committee of $2,000. I know we had this on the agenda before. You know, they were looking to add a secretary, and we did that for this year. So this would just be kind of putting that in the budget for next year, where we didn't have that line item before. So.
What is the question I saw on this is, what is the increased equipment rental for $73,000 for CMAS? Because the previous year we didn't have a number like that. I don't know.
Ms. Hebert.
Yep.
Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
if you don't mind, we can get into the details of the budgets when we bring the departments in, or we can meet with them earlier to get an explanation. But if we went through every budget and asked I don't know if Julie can really answer those questions right now in detail. I think that's left for Mr. Menard and Ms. Sylvia. Is that fair, Ms. Hebert?
Yeah, I mean, they can definitely explain it better. I wanted to at least outline it here so you guys could focus on it and see where the bigger increases were. But I agree with Mr. Gasper that I think it would be helpful. I think there's no doubt that DPW will have to come in and explain their budget for next year. So
I have Mr. DeRoche, I have some concerns with CMAS as well. So, I mean, that's why there won't be one of the budgets that we try to whittle off the list today. I mean, there's several budgets that we need to get some detail on and have that conversation with the department heads.
Very good.
okay. So I'll go to the next page, which gives you the detail of the fixed costs. And again, this accounts for about $512,000, increasing our budget for FY22. One of the biggest one actually is the Old Colony Regional Tuition Assessment, which is a $323,000 increase. I know they're working with their budget subcommittee, and I think that number might come down slightly by about $50,000. But that's still, you know, a huge expense for the town to you know, have to come up with in 1 year. Pensions, obviously, yeah, this is a fixed cost. We can't do anything about the Bristol County Retirement Assessment and the Medicare, about $125,000 together. And insurance, we really lucked out this year. Once again, we got a 0% increase on our health insurance premiums. We found out, I think, last week, which is fantastic for the town. And so for insurance, the increase that I plugged in here is a 15% increase on the liability and workers' comp insurances. We don't have a set figure for that yet. They've said, you know, look for about 15% increase, which would be about $66,000. And again, obviously, once we get that final number in there, I'll update this for you. But these are the fixed costs that we're looking at for this year, that once we get those final numbers in there, we're stuck with them. The next page, you know, I'll go through quickly, but these are some of the current fund balances for FY22. The free cash, we're still waiting for our certification to be completed and coming up with our estimates for what the certification will be based on our balance sheets. It looks like it'll be about $1.9 million for the end of the year. And then in the fall, we used $247,000 in our fall town meeting. So our net free cash that would be available for our May town meeting should be around $1.6 million. Again, once we get the final certification number, that will be adjusted. I'll mention here that this is actually pretty on par with what we typically do. We're usually between like $1 million and $1.2 million in free cash. And the excess that you see here is mainly derived from the $340,000 that we didn't spend at the fall town meeting, and about $200,000 in CARES money that we received at the end of the fiscal year that helped bump up some of our revenue. So even though this is higher than we normally have certified, it's pretty on par. It makes sense with not spending that money in the fall and with the CARES money that came in. So
on that number, Ms. Hebert, it's the number's kind of inflated due to what you just discussed, right? What we didn't spend last fall town meeting, the 300 and change, and then some CARES Act reimbursements. So it would, for budgetary reasons, it'd be very detrimental if we started looking at that number and saying, bang, we're going after that number, because as you go through, that number is going to disappear because it's something that was in the past. So, kudos to the town and everybody that participated last year, but we just have to be diligent before we start thinking that 1.6 or 1.7 million bucks is up for grabs.
I completely agree. We have to be realistic, and right now we've done a really good job of managing our finances. So just as you said, Mr. Chair, these numbers are inflated, and I'm assuming that you're going to see an inflated number at the end of this year as well. But we need to be realistic about it. It's not, we can't use one-time money to fund our budget. So we need to be smart about how we look at this money. So moving on, stabilization, your current balance currently is a little over 3,082,000. And I'll add in here, when I first came, this number was about 1.6 million. So, kudos to everyone, in finance, the Board of Selectmen and the townspeople for prioritizing their funding and putting this money away. We're lucky we haven't had to use it through COVID, but I think we've set ourselves up to have, a really good reserve here if we ever need it. A few others I'll mention in here. OPEB trust is about 414,000. The capital expense trust, which is that solar capital fund, is about $50,000 for the end of last year. And the school has their special education reserve fund that has 200,000 in it, and they haven't had to use any of that money yet. So that is still available funding for them. The next page I have, what are our budget goals? The left side, I won't really go into it. That's kind of recapping what we've talked about already. I'll mention that last bullet point, that the deficit we have right now, the 143,000, obviously that'll increase once we get COLAs and once we hear from the school. I'm assuming that number will be increased. So we definitely have to look at our budget and see how we want to maneuver it to make sure that we're level funded. Goals, I think these are important for everyone to just throw out here. Main one is maintain level service in town operations. We've obviously had to make cuts over last year and this year in various departments, but we're still working hard to maintain level services for all town operations. Retain healthy free cash and stabilization levels as our safety net during this economic uncertainty. Again, I think the town did a great job last year with carrying over that excess money and planning for a deficit in the state, the state aid. And that really set us up well for this year where, we have that extra money to kind of hold on to. Use little to no one-time revenue to balance the budget. I think this is a really important one that we've, as Mr. Chair has said, we've worked really hard over the last 4 or 5 years. And I'll mention this is really difficult because when you use that one-time revenue, it compounds on itself every year. So if you use $300,000 of free cash this year to balance your budget, and next year's budget is more, which it always is, you need to find something else to fill in that $300,000 if you're gonna get rid of it. And that's hard to do. So the fact that we've been decreasing, when I first came here, we were using about $1.2 million of free cash to balance the budget. And we're now down to about $335,000 last year. I'd love to keep that number minimizing until we're not using any free cash to balance the budget. I think that's a really important thing. And I know the DOR really highly looks at whether you're using free cash to balance your budget every year. Continue funding all important capital projects. I know the selectmen have made this a priority over the last few town meetings during COVID, looking at what we actually need and not what we want, and making sure we're funding those important projects. Fund all approved collective bargaining agreements within town departments, and continue funding our OPEB obligations. I know last year we didn't get a chance to put anything into OPEB, but it is something that's very important for our financials. So hopefully with this year too, we'll be able to keep meeting that goal. And then the last page I have here is just, this is also on our agenda, is kind of talking about the calendar, the dates and the schedule for town meeting. So I have it listed here. Next week, the 26th is the deadline for articles to be sent to the Board of Selectmen's office for town meeting. And then that gives us a good amount of time. I have March 1st to April 5th for the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee and the Bylaw Review Committee to review all the articles, review the budgets, and have a good chance to kind of go through everything with the departments. I have on here a goal of April 6th for the Board of Selectmen to approve the final warrant. It gives about a week or two for the Finance Committee to review all the articles and give their recommendations. And the last day that we need to post the warrant for town meeting would be April 23rd, with town meeting being on Monday, May 10th. I do have on here 6 p.m. for a time. But I know, I think, Mr. Chair, you wanted to talk about this. We typically do 7 o'clock, and I had put 6 o'clock, but I'm not sure if you want to keep it at 7. I know this was a point of discussion for you.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Hebert. Gentlemen, I was a little concerned. I seen 6 p.m. for that Monday night, and Ms. Hebert's absolutely correct. We usually do town meeting at 7 p.m. to give people time to get home, get their kids done doing what they need to do with their family, and maybe grab a bite to eat and then head over to town meeting. So I did want to have that as a conversation piece with members of the Board of Selectmen today to see if they wanted to keep the 7 p.m. or was there an appetite to move it to 6 p.m. I'm more inclined to keep it at the 7 p.m. That's what people have come to be used to, the 7 p.m. But it's up for discussion.
I think we got to, talk to Roger Cabral, who's the moderator. I think technically town meeting is his meeting, so get his feedback, but I'm inclined the 7 o'clock is something sort of been our tradition. I'd be inclined to stick with that as well.
That's fine on my end. I do have a question though, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
town
Mr.
meeting.
Burrows.
We're going to be under the same parameters as we've been during COVID. I don't foresee the state of emergency being lifted, so I didn't know if there was any guidance from the state. Are we still going with 10% of the quorum as acceptable again, or is this open for discussion? I mean,
Yeah, I think regardless, Selectman DeRoche, of what the governor's changes may be, I think it would be a pretty smart move for the Board of Selectmen to just keep that threshold low, just in case, because we don't know where the pandemic is, and it's too hard for us to try to figure that out. I don't think anybody can figure it out, right? So I think if we just keep that threshold at the 10%, the lower number, we're all set. Last town meeting, we had 55 people coming through the door, and we had an auxiliary room in the other part of the schools in case we had a little overflow. It'll work out pretty well, but our normal base at town meetings, usually the old quorum 75, and we usually got right around the 75 to 100 people in the room. So we keep the threshold low, and if more people come, I think we're ready to go as far as accommodating more people as well.
Mr. Chairman, Dave, Mr. DeRoche, you made a good point. With it being a Monday evening and some of the disinfecting protocols that need to be in place with the school department for school the next day, do we need to move it to a Saturday to give staff the ability to clean the place up, or is that something they can do overnight? And, so that there's no disruption to the school. So maybe we need to reach out to the school department, see what they have concerns at all. And Roger, those would be my two suggestions.
Yeah, Ms. Hebert, didn't I bring that up with you when we were in, and what's the deal? What's the deal with that?
I'll follow up with the schools again to see how it's looking. I know that this is part of our bylaw. And I don't know, I know that last year the governor, whatever, one of the pieces of legislation he put through allowed us to change the date on our, based on our bylaws because of the state of emergency. And I don't know if that's still in effect. But I'll find out more about that and follow up with the schools and make sure it won't be a problem if we had to keep it on the Monday.
Yep, just keep us abreast of anything going on with that. If there's gonna be a change, we have to make that announcement sooner rather than later.
Agreed.
Mrs. DeRoche?
One comment or concern I have is that, you know, last year when we had the state of emergency and we brought the consensus or the quorum down to 10 people or 15 people, we kept a town meeting, a regular town meeting, very limited in scope about what we wanted to have done. So my only concern is limiting the quorum and having 15, 20 people come up and directing, directing the town meeting in a certain direction. That's redundant, but, sending the town meeting in a certain direction. So that's just the concern I have. I know we're going to work it out. We'll be able to get through it, but.
Yeah, here's the problem with that though, is we've been successful in pulling off town meetings, and I think your concern might be more with, maybe some zoning things or what bylaw changes and things of that nature. I surely share those concerns, but we've pulled off 2 town meetings now. And I mean, one of them was to approve a full $32 million budget. And we did it to keep the operations of the town moving forward. Yes, I agree with you, Selectman DeRoche, that it could be dangerous, but I would add this: as long as we, the town, are fiscally responsible, we've never really had any kind of challenges to the budget process. So, I think we need to, as I stated before, you need to kind of live with the pandemic, and we have to figure things out and do our best to manage around this. I don't know how many articles are coming forward. I would hope that we see some from planning, but we'll see what happens there, right?
Well, that is a determination, the number of articles that come in and what the articles comprise of, would be, something to consider. That's
up to us, the Board of Selectmen. I mean, we'll review the articles as they come forward. And if we feel that something could be controversial, as we stated before in the past, Mr. DeRoche, if we feel that's something that we're not comfortable presenting to town meeting voters and the residents and taxpayers of the town, then we strike it from the warrant and it won't be there.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. So, yep.
Do you have anything else to add? Because I know that we've had our budget books, and I kind of went through all of them. And I just want to thank you for your new Melissa Ford, our town accountant, for putting this budget book together. In the index forum part of it, it's very clean and organized with the tab numbers on it. It's very easy to go in and identify where they are according to the index. I had a real easy time last night, and I actually blew through a lot of these things. And I was trying to pick out some of the ones that are level funded and not so much of a big deal that maybe the board would be willing to approve today, and just kind of get them off the list and out of our way. If the board has any pleasure in listening to some of them that I have, I think they're pretty easy to identify. And if that's the pleasure of the board, or you want to sit and go through every one at another meeting and scrub all the budgets individually, we could surely do that. But some of them are very easy for us to pass along to FinCom to get them moving and hopefully accommodate this schedule a little easier. We could probably pass a few of them out today.
I agree with that. I think that's fair.
Yeah, there are a number of them that are pretty much level funded.
Yeah, so I just went through a few of them, gentlemen. I mean, I got the Board of Appeals here. I just made a note, talked to the Secretary of the Board of Appeals and Ms. Hebert about that. And the reason why I wrote Ms. Hebert is maybe I know that they're going through a lot of things with special permits or variances and things of that nature, which may be increasing their advertising, which they did not increase. So as long as the Board of Appeals is all set with their budget, we're good with it as well, I guess. And that's where I'll go. That's my comment on that. We've got cable receipts reserve fund. It's pretty much level funded. Cemetery, Historical Commission, I wrote here, if they're good, I'm good, flat, no increases. So if Pauline Texera says she's good with her budget, no other necessary increases or any substantial ones, we can get rid of Historical Commission. Miscellaneous, the moderator, I wrote check with Mr. Cabral to see if he's got any requests for anything, but his is level funded. Reserve fund, retirement of debt interest, retirement of debt principal, sealers of weights and measures, street lighting, and veterans. We can pop those off the list and let them
Motion
rip.
to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Hebert, can you just check up with the Board of Appeals, though?
I will.
I mean, the
Yep.
budget's level funded. I know they have a lot of applications and it costs more money to advertise the more applications, right? So I just want to make sure they're comfortable with that budget.
I will. Thank you.
And we'll let the finance committee deal with it if there's a small increase of a couple $100 or whatever it is. I don't think that needs to come back to the board. Let the FinCom handle that.
Right.
And the rest of them, guys, we'll go through those and just bang them out and we'll have a meeting. After Tuesday's meeting, we'll set one up for budgets and we'll go through those and have the department heads come in. We'll discuss when we go through all the budgets, we'll discuss then which department heads we want to come in and we'll get them in at the next meeting. Maybe we'll post the meeting a week after, try to accommodate FinCom and get them ahead of the game as much as we can on this. I know we're a little late here, but we have a lot of moving targets with revenues and things of that nature. And so some departments, as Ms. Hebert spoke on earlier, Old Colony was a big increase. I think it was like $323,000. It's a huge impact, but I think that when the superintendent comes, Aaron Polanski comes in front of the board this Tuesday, actually, meaning I think you'll provide an explanation for the reasons of that $323,000 increase. I think you guys know that the town of Freetown went off on their own and went to a different vocational school. So that's a massive impact there. I would anticipate 40 or 50% of that increase is due to those Freetown moving out and going to another school, which we're all impacted. All 5 municipalities in the original agreement are impacted by that move by Freetown, right?
So, Mr. Chairman, you've had more experience with Old Colony than I have. So with one of, you said Freetown moving on, I know, like, say, for instance, Fairhaven is in an agreement. So we lose students, right? So we lose students, and in turn, that's tuition. I guess you could say that frees up more seats for residents or students from the host communities. But just from a business standpoint, would it be, I guess we can say this question, would be unheard of to say, approach the Fairhaven School District, where I know they're in a relationship with New Bedford Voc, but does that have to be a mutually exclusive situation where if we were to open up a certain amount of seats to Fairhaven residents to, who may feel they'd rather go to a school like Old Colony, a little smaller, a different dynamic, just, think outside the box from a business management perspective, just look at the business model. Is it an antiquated one? Is there ways that they can be generating revenue that we're not doing now? So anyway, just something, again, I know you're an alum, you've been really close to Old Colony. Just be curious if that's something even achievable,
Yeah, I think that's actually a great point. Is basically, if I understand your point correctly, Selectman Wona, you're basically saying, okay, so Freetown left, that wasn't in the network, in other words, and maybe we could talk to Old Colony and see if they can look at maybe, like you said, Fairhaven or another municipality that maybe we could do the same kind of deal with Old Colony with and invite some of those folks from another town in there and kind of substitute that revenue loss.
Yeah, I mean, not to poach students from New Bedford Voc, but again, at the end of the day, it's all about providing students with, if you can provide as many options as possible. Again, some students might not feel New Bedford Voc is a good fit for them. Too big, too fast paced, whatever, right? Old Colony might be a good option for them. I don't know. So
yeah. Hey, listen, that's Aaron's coming in Tuesday night. I think that's a great idea, Selectman Warner. I think maybe you ought to make that pitch Tuesday night.
Right.
See if he swings the bat.
Right. Just one last comment, if I could, Mr. Chairman. I just think with the budget, Thank you for this, giving us this presentation and this baseline. I think it's really, really helpful. But it's just a challenge to the board and other departments or other elected officials to really gut check. The budget should represent the direction we feel we want the town to go in, and I think we're in a crisis, and the conventional wisdom is, to batten down the hatches and button up. But sometimes when you're in a crisis, that's the time to step on the gas, and be prepared to capture opportunity. I think, Congress is debating a $1.9 trillion relief package. That means potentially a ton of money going to go to the states and then to municipalities in the form of grants and infrastructure. I just want to make sure that we have our own infrastructure in place to capture opportunity. Mr. Chairman, you've got a bold program to talk about redoing the roads and water pipes. Well, I don't think we have the equipment, the actual physical equipment to carry that out. Do we have the personnel to go chase grants and do things that way? So that'd be my challenge, to really stretch that out and see if our budget reflects where we want to be in the next 5 or 10 years, and can we capture the opportunities that may come our way?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. There's been some discussion floating with us and in different positions and opportunities there, and we'll have those discussions when we look at individual budgets and have that conversation. But I agree, there are certain times where you seek advantage of the downturns, right? And then when you're coming out of it, you're already there, you're already prepared, your shovel-ready projects are out there in front and you're ready to go. Instead of, okay, it's announced that we're out of the hole, but everybody else is out of the hole at the same time. We'll come out and we're already, we already got the picks and shovels in our hands, and we're already digging the holes and they're just climbing out, right? So I think you're absolutely spot on, Selectman Wona, that we should be looking at it as an opportunity to capture that, right? And we can surely have that discussion. I think public safety, DPW, those are the big budgets that we're going to be looking at and scrutinizing. But I think that that's also where we need to look at and say, and even some of our town offices look at it and say, how do we restructure so that we can move forward in that capacity? I think what John's describing. So
right.
I look forward to that conversation. Mr. DeRoche, Mr. Wona, do you have anything else?
Not enough talking.
I'm all set. Been very informative. Julie and Melissa, thank you for putting this
Yeah, great job.
information together. It's been the best presented since I've been a selectman. So
Yeah.
even a photographer can understand it.
Yeah, they did a great job. I came in, sat with both of them yesterday. I was very impressed with the coordination between the two, right? The town administrator and the town accountant working collectively together. It was nice to see that team. I sat down, went through with the both of them, and it was very clear and transparent of everything we were doing. Everything was orderly. Again, I like what she did with the budget book, and if there's any changes, she can just identify those changes with the tabs, and we'll go in and make those changes, and we'll keep moving forward. So this will be the book that you guys will end up eventually carrying into town meeting floor.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership on this as well.
Thank you, Selectman Wona. Ms. Hebert, do you have anything else? I mean, I know we got something else on the town meeting checklist. We did that already, so that's kind of banged off all in this whole presentation. But Melissa, you have anything to speak to the board on?
No, I'm good.
You good? Ms. Hebert, nothing to add?
No, I'm good. That was it.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. We are now adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, ladies.
Aye.